if your prices are that high, are we capitalizing and monetizing on the wound of worthiness?
Hey everyone, I'm Thais Sky. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. Hello everybody. Thais Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim, the podcast. I am your host. I'm sitting here in my closet in Los Angeles, California. I have with me today Alionka Polanco. She is just the most divine person I know. And we talk a lot about integrity in the coaching industry. So if you're a coach, healer, teacher, consultant, if you navigate the self-development world as an entrepreneur, this conversation is going to be really rich. You're going to really enjoy it. But before I bring Alionka on, a couple things. First off, for all of you who support my Patreon, thank you, and thank you. I got some new members this month, including Brittany, Katie, and Sylvia. Thank you for pledging your support to Reclaim the podcast. Reclaim is ad-free as of right now. And the best way that you can support the podcast, if you're really enjoying listening to the interviews, if you enjoy me and Lindsay sharing our thoughts on white privilege, and you want this to continue, please consider supporting me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. It goes a long way to helping me make this podcast self-sufficient, which is my goal. I'm about 1/5 towards my goal right now. So anything that you can support will be greatly appreciated. I also want to announce that next week, doors open for my group program, Worthy Women Rise. I lead a cohort of women through a 4-month experience of exploring their worthiness wound and deepening their experience in their lives, cultivating tools that will help them navigate their shadows and create some real embodied changes in their lives so they can rise up and be their fully expressed selves. So I lead Worthy Women Rise twice a year. The fall cohort will be starting at the end of August. So doors open next week for that program. If you're interested in learning more, if this is piquing your curiosity, if you enjoy the conversations I've shared about the worthiness wound, some of which is going to be in this conversation with Alionka around worthiness and money. If you want to learn more about Worthy Women Rise, just go to worthywomenrise.com. You can learn all about the program and you can sign up to be on the wait list. Or if you're listening to this after August 6th, well, good news. The doors are open. So you can go see if this program feels good for you and apply. So this conversation is all about integrity in the coaching industry. And integrity is, as I share in the conversation, it's one of my values. And I've noticed in the past few months that I've been out of integrity with the commitments that I've made. I've told people that I would write blog posts for their website, that I would be a part of their thing, that I would sign up and do this. And when I made those promises, I was fully a yes to those promises. And then I realized I don't have the capacity to follow through. That's not what's out of integrity. What's out of integrity is the ways that I've kind of avoided saying that to them, right? I've kind of just ghosted them, or I just didn't even respond to their email. And this is out of integrity for me. So I've been really sitting and thinking about what's up with this? Why have I not been following through on what I said yes to? And this is something that I think we all navigate from time to time. Is why do we say yes to things that we're not a hell yes for? Or why do we say yes and feel like it's a hell yes, and then our minds change and we don't then say anything? We just keep going, right? There are times when it's important to continue an obligation even though you're no longer excited for it. I totally get that. There's something extremely powerful about taking a stand for your word, because really at the end of the day, all you have is your word. You made a commitment, you follow through with that commitment. That's important. And at the same time, we also have to look at and honor the ways that we made a commitment and now we legitimately just cannot follow through. We cannot follow through. It could be because our obligations change, our capacity to hold different things change. It could be a variety of different variables. But the fact of the matter is, what do you do when you said yes to something and now you're not able to complete that yes? And I've been sitting with this. And of course, the answer comes down to boundaries. The B word. I know as women, we have such a hard time with boundaries. Boundaries is something that we explore in Worthy Women Rise. And every time this module comes up, the conversation is, why is it so goddamn difficult to tell people no? Why is it so difficult to have boundaries? Now, a lot of us, when we think of boundaries, we think of like a wall. But the way I like to think of boundaries is more like where the ocean meets the land. The sand, right? So if you think about it, if you're looking from far up, like if you're looking at 30,000 feet down an ocean and land, it makes one straight line, right? You can see a clear division between ocean and land. But the closer you get, the more you zoom in, the more you see that it's actually constantly changing and shifting. Right? Boundaries is not one thing. You don't set it once and you're good to go. It's a continual invitation to see what needs to be changed, what needs to be tweaked, and how is boundaries connected deeply with my worthiness wound. Right? Our fear of saying no is deeply connected to our desire to be people pleasers because we want love. We are afraid of people's judgment of us, et cetera, et cetera. And that directly ties in to our sense of worthiness. And so I've always seen boundaries as a worthiness issue. And the more that we can begin to understand our worthiness wound and the ways that we feel inadequate, the easier it is for us to establish boundaries. And so this is something I've been sitting with and unpacking in my life is how have I been lax in my boundaries where I've allowed myself to say yes to all these things that now I can't fulfill. And what needs to happen for me to tighten those boundaries a little bit and to bring more integrity in my word. And what's interesting to note is that there are ways that we can explore these types of questions with a lot of judgment, right? We can get very self-critical when we're analyzing the ways that we may have let ourselves down or let other people down. And we can get very critical and hurtful and judgmental and angry. And here's where I feel like the work really lies. The work is not to never be out of integrity. The work isn't even to always have proper boundaries. I think that's an expectation of perfection that's just not available to us as humans. So I don't see the healing work as achieving some level of perfection where then no bad things can ever happen. But rather, it's a continuous invitation to notice where we make mistakes, notice where we can do better, without that additional voice in our heads telling us that this means that we're bad, wrong, broken, right? Like, where can we be gentle with ourselves? Where can we be kind to our humanity? So where can we say, you know what, I messed up and I need to take ownership of that mess up. I need to be in integrity with that mess up, but I don't need to self-annihilate in the process. That to me is the path of radical healing because that's what's going to allow us to learn from our mistakes faster. That's what's going to allow us to be more in integrity, to get to a better place where we make less mistakes, which is the irony, right? And so I wanted to share this process with you because I just want to highlight that, one, we all make mistakes. We all fall out of integrity. In this conversation with Alionka, I share so many of the other mistakes I've made. Making mistakes is a point of life. It's just the way life is. But we can also learn how to make mistakes with a little bit of grace. And wherever you're really being hard on yourself right now, wherever you're feeling like you really let yourself or other people down, where you feel like a fuck up, you feel disgusting in your body, see if you can bring your hand to your heart and just say, forgiven, forgiven. This too is okay. This too is allowed. Okay, so let's get into this interview with Alionka. Just her bio real quick. Alionka Polanco has a vision that women are going to heal and rule the world. An NYU certified life and success coach, she is the founder of the Big Vision Mastermind and author of Beyond Profit, The Successful Woman's Guide to a Meaningful Life. Over the last 4+ years, she has coached top performers in fields as diverse as sales executives at Google, Broadway stars, and business owners from Dubai to Australia and everywhere in between. You can connect with her on Facebook, Instagram, using her handle, Alionka Polanco, or at alionkapolanco.com. And as always, you can go to the show notes and find her bio there and all of the links that we share in this conversation. So we talk about integrity in the coaching industry. And as you're listening to this, if you're a coach, if you're a healer, teacher in the self-development industry. The questions that I have for you really is like, what values do you see in the industry? Like, what values do you see now that the industry is upholding? What values do you want the industry to be upholding? And in what ways can you make sure that you are in alignment with the values that you want to see in the industry? Hello, my love. Thank you so much for being on Reclaim the Podcast. I am so excited that you're here. This conversation, I know, is going to be so good.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So for people who may not be familiar with you and your work, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure thing. So I'm Alionka of alionkapolanco.com.
I love how your name has like a rhythm to it. Like,
it totally does. It's like a little song. And I have a vision that women are going to heal, rule the world. And specifically, I'm a coach and a spiritual counselor. So that's what I do. That's what I do during the day.
I love it. What do you do at nighttime? Is there something different?
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
So something that I asked you before we clicked the record button is, what are you exploring right now? Like, what's coming up for you in your life and in your business? And you share two things, but I want to get into the professional one first, and then we'll see if there's space for the life one, because that one's also very good. But you shared that you're exploring, right, the intersection, kind of the space of integrity within the coaching industry and the coaching community. And I would love to hear you expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I did my coach training in 2013. So I take coaching really seriously as a profession. And I don't know, Thais, like for me, there's actually a difference between like the coaching industry versus like the online marketing coaching industry. They're very different. And the people that trained me to be a coach, like, were not in the online marketing world. So I really came, like, when I did start to move online, I was like, wait, that's not coaching. Like, that's not coaching. And so it's been something I'm exploring right now is how do these two intersect for me, who like comes from, like the pedagogy of coaching versus like this online world where it sometimes feels like it's just like, pay me to tell you what to do, and then you'll get people to pay you for you to tell them what to do. And let's just like keep this kind of line happening. And I have to be honest, like that's really wrong to me, and it's really uncomfortable to me, because I think coaching is, first of all, anyone in the world could experience coaching. It's not specific to just entrepreneurs.
Just the white middle class people, you mean?
Yeah. It's not just available to people who are online 24/7. It like, before I jumped online, I had clients who worked at Google. I had clients who were on Broadway. I had clients who like were from all walks of life. So that, I'm even like getting tingly talking about it, because that's what I'm exploring right now. Like how to remain in integrity in this industry.
Yeah, it's something I've been exploring as well. I'm in grad school right now. I decided to go back to grad school to get my master's in clinical psych because of this very question. Because of this frustration that I was feeling that so much of coaching has become irresponsible. So much of the coaching industry has become washed with something that's not coaching. And it's scary because I see this as something that I want to be doing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. And I'm scared that the coaching industry bubble is going to pop in a way that's going to affect the good coaches with the bad. So I kind of made this decision for a multitude of reasons, but that was certainly one of them, which is there is such a lack of integrity in what we're doing as coaches, and what we're saying coaching is, and what we're saying we can do as coaches.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And congratulations on going back to school. I think that
Thank you.
is so, I'm like in my head, I'm like such a scholar and academic person. So congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
But no, yeah, I completely agree about this like bubble of the coaching world, and that at some point it's gonna pop. And what is that going to mean? I don't know that I'm afraid of that happening so much. But as you mentioned, I am afraid, like, well, what does that mean for people who are actually coaching? I think we have to be really distinct about, are we teaching?
Yeah.
Are we strategizing? Are we advising? Are we consulting? Or are we coaching? Because they're different. Mm-hmm. And that really, for me, is my biggest issue when it comes to the online industry, is that all of these other things, advising and teaching and consulting, are getting lumped in under coaching. And that's not coaching. Like, coaching is a profession in and of itself. And I just wish it were honored more.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I've witnessed for myself is that as I'm now engaging in the mental health world of psychotherapy, and I'm learning like what it looks like, and ethically and morally what this container of psychotherapy is, it's a pretty clear, there's some pretty clear parameters. Like they really want to protect the licensure. So there's a lot of things that you can and cannot do within this model of psychotherapy for right or wrong reasons, right? That's up to debate. But it's so clear to me how, because there isn't that in the coaching world, because there is no regulation, there is no overarching conversations about what it is and what it's not, it's so easy for it to get so muddled, and then it's so easy for people to take advantage of that muddling.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah. And so here we go. Because there's such a lack of clarity around what is coaching, I'm seeing people really starting to capitalize on this idea of trauma, right? Trauma is such like a hip thing. It's like such a cool thing to be talking about. And so I'm seeing coaches who have no experience, no capacity to be doing this work, starting to name and label their services for people who want to do work with their trauma in order to then make money in their business, right? Like doing the trauma work to get more money or to do something else. And that's so dangerous, because if you don't have that expertise, how can you be holding space in that way?
Absolutely. Well, that feels like really dangerous, like even in a medical sense, right?
Absolutely.
Like I'm such a fan of therapy. I've gone to therapists since I was like 19 years old. And so I'm really clear on like, what do I require of my therapist and what do I require of my coach? Very different. And I would never go, and as much as I like love my coach, I would never go to her with the things that I need for my therapist, like it's a different healing modality. And so that is so dangerous.
It's so dangerous. And I think it's kind of like, children need clear parameters in order for them to thrive. Right?
Yes.
Like they need to know what's okay and what's not okay, so that they can then use that container, to grow and to become better. Without these parameters, I feel like it's become kind of the wild, wild west, and we're not really clear on what to do and what not to do.
Oh my God, that's so real. I'm actually curious for you, Tates. Do you I wonder how you think, not that we're predicting that this bubble is going to burst, but just like, I'm always curious about like what even is the future of this industry, and like does it really have a future?
Yeah, I see so many benefits to coaching, and the way it fits in our world, where right now there's a lack of service. right? That's why I got into coaching, because I see there is such a clear, distinct need for it. I think if we're not really, if we don't come together as a community to get very clear on what our values are, I'm afraid that it's not that coaching will disappear. It's that a lot of people are going to be harmed in its explosion. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see coaching ever going away, because I do feel like it fits a need. But I do think that it's causing a lot of harm, and it's going to cause a big explosion of harm before things kind of settle in, if that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. And I really, something that came up for me while you were speaking was like, as a community coming together to define our values. Like, that feels actually so critical to allowing coaching to be this great thing that it is. And it's like, I don't know, I think people who have experienced real coaching know how like awesome it is. You know what I mean? But then there's also this question of like, well, have you experienced real coaching, or have you experienced like online coaching? You know?
Yeah. And I think I keep coming back to the word integrity. I want to explore this and unpack this word, because it means so much to me. I've been out of integrity in my coaching business so many times. I've caused harm in so many ways. I've done all the wrong things. And I share that pretty openly on the podcast, because I want people to understand that even with your good intentions, we have to go beyond just good intentions, not just name the problem, but then do better. Right. And so one of the many ways that I was out of integrity was with the amount of money that I was charging, and with the amount of money that I felt I deserved, quote unquote, to make from each client. And something that my professor the other day said to our class, he was like, his belief is, this was his belief that he was sharing. He was like, if you're making a lot of money in this industry, and he was talking about psychotherapy, but I think it can also apply to coaching. Like, if you're making a lot of money, what you're doing, like per client, like if he meant like charging a lot of money without any other options, he's like, you're capitalizing on people's pain and their mental health.
Thumbs down. Thumbs down to that. Yeah.
I mean, isn't that so true? Like, if you're charging an exorbitant amount of money, and again, it's not that it's wrong or bad to charge however you want to charge. But if you're not offering any other options, any other sliding scale of any capacity, which means that your services are unavailable to the majority of the people who desperately need it, what are you doing? Are you really doing this work because you care? Or are you doing this work because you want to make money?
Yeah. No, I think that's so real. And it brings up, I love that we can be like super real on Reclaim Taste, because this is why this is like one of my edges right now, because I've been like steadily increasing my prices. And as I get up and upper and upper and upper there, I'm like, is this even real? Like, do I really need to be charging this much? Is this my biggest thing is like, is this actually providing enough value that this money point is worth it? And that's like a really honest to God question that I have to ask myself every single time I raise my rates. And I feel like that's why sometimes I have hired people who will tell me, well, like, oh, well, you're a real coach, you should be charging XYZ. And I'm like, I have to sit with that. Like, like I can't just make that decision, and I can't just listen to someone else and do. I think that's where the integrity comes in, is like, it has to sit well with my soul. And that takes longer than just like listening to someone.
Yeah, I made that mistake. Someone's like, you need to raise your rates. And I'm like, oh, really? Oh, okay. Sure. How about $1 bajillion? Like, how about this amount? And like, just pulling a number out of my ass and being like, how about this amount? And it's like, yeah, okay, sure. Why not? But then you have to sell it, right? Like, part of what we do is we also have to sell our work. And it was in the selling it that I was like, I don't think this price is is justifiable right now, or
Yeah.
based on all these other factors. But we
Mm.
get so caught up with our worthiness and our deservability and our value in the world with our work and with the monetary value that it gets very confusing, right? Because
That's so
what are
real.
you worth truly, right? Like you're worth a bajillion million billion dollars, right?
Well, really, we're priceless. Like there's no money
Exactly.
amount.
Exactly. So how can we then equate any type of worthiness with our rates,
Well, and actually, even just to go back to what your professor recently said, I feel like the equivalent for the coaching industry is that, like, if your prices are that high, that high, that high, are we capitalizing and monetizing on the wound of worthiness? Which I feel, mic drop.
Mic drop.
which I feel like you talk so much about, Thais, right? I feel like you're the worthiness queen. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I think
And
so. My conclusion is yes. We're capitalizing on people's feeling inadequate, feeling like their lives are not enough, feeling like, their lifestyle doesn't look that way. And they want it to look that way because patriarchy tells us that we have to look that way. So then we spend an exorbitant amount of money hiring people who live that life to try to make their lives look that way. I mean, this is the industry, and it's heartbreaking because I know that people who genuinely are good coaches like you genuinely care to better people's lives. It's not about you.
yeah.
It's not about your life. It's not about how glamorous your life is. It's about doing solid work.
I wish people could watch this because we're on video. I'm literally sitting in my bathroom in New York City because it's like the quietest place in my whole apartment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not like, it's not like the most glamorous life, but it's like a life I'm proud of. And I wonder if, like, when we talk about the values of this industry, like, are we just committed to I heard someone say this the other day and it really triggered me. She was like, we create our own economies. And I was like, do we? I was really triggered by that comment because I was like, I feel like that might be really easy for like a white woman who charges $60,000 a year to, you know?
Yeah. Yes, I do know. Yes, I very much do know. And integrity, I think, is something that we all have to be asking ourselves constantly. It's not just a one and done sort of thing. It's like a constant check-in. Am I in integrity with my values? This is something I'm asking myself all the time. I've been having a lot more conversations about racism online, offline. I'm having these conversations daily, weekly. It's part of my life to talk about this stuff now. And in my grad class like a few weeks ago, someone said something that landed wrong with me. It was a white man, and he shared like, well, everyone got here through hard work, kind of this privileged notion that hard work got everyone in the room.
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as racism or whatever. And I didn't say anything, right? I didn't speak up. I didn't say anything. And afterwards, my friend Lindsay and I, we were like unpacking that. Like, why didn't I say anything? And by me not saying anything, I was out of integrity. I was out of integrity
Yeah.
with my values by not saying anything. So let's unpack that. Not from a place of shaming, right? But from a place of genuine, like, if
What
we want to do
happened?
better in the world, like, why aren't we doing what we say that we should be doing? And Lindsay was honest with me, and she was like, you present yourself online with a certain strength around these conversations of racism. And I'm noticing in our grad class that you're a lot more muted. Like, let's talk about that. And that's not fun feedback to receive, right? But it's like, we've got to be having these questions within our communities, with ourselves, with each other constantly about where are we not in alignment, because that lack of alignment is slowly eroding on our work and our capacity to make a greater impact.
Yes, yes, yes. And then, like, it's not fun feedback to hear, but it's so powerful. to then go and actually look at that and actually have that conversation with yourself. I'm like, if I could give you a round of applause, I totally would. But I do think like that it's kind of easy to live in a bubble.
Yeah.
And it's really and like, I'm not judging anyone, but it's really easy to live in a bubble where someone tells you what to do and then you do it. That's really easy. But if you want to like actually be human and like live the human experience, it would be really helpful to have your own thoughts. And it would be really helpful to like do self-inquiry and ask yourself questions that actually cause you to grow.
Yeah. That's it. I can't follow up with that. I mean, it's so critical. I think because the online bubble feels so real, and in so many ways it's so valuable and it is so real, and I'm able to connect with people all around the world, and through social media I've been able to get, make connections with people that I would have never made before, so while the space is so precious in so many ways, where do we also kind of fool ourselves into believing that we're making this tremendous impact when really we're kind of just speaking to the choir, and we're like teaching people how to make money, and then they're teaching people how to make money, and it's like all the same. It's like incestuous.
It is incestuous. Well, that's why that one a Facebook post about we create our own economies really triggered me, because someone was talking about how like she hires her clients and then they hire her again, and they're just like all hire each other. And the comment was, we create our own economies. I was like, this 3-woman economy this 3-white woman economy is not an economy. Like that's not, and that's dangerous to be teaching.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just feel like I agree that there are so many beautiful things about the online world. And I really think it comes back to kind of what you said at the beginning of this interview, Tace. It's like, we have to get really clear on what our values are as an industry, because it is a new industry. It is a Wild West. I don't think that's like a misnomer. I totally think it feels like the Wild West. And what happened historically is like someone had to come in and make some freaking rules so that people stop. Yeah. But I mean,
I mean, all I know is anytime I tell anyone that I'm a life coach, like out in the real world, they're like, oh, like Tony Robbins?
Tony Robbins?
I'm like, yes, exactly,
No.
like Tony Robbins. People don't get my facial expression, but it's not a good one.
Well, I actually, can we talk about Tony Robbins for 2 seconds?
Of course we can.
Because I have like a kind of a love-hate relationship in that sense. Not that I've ever been a fan of his teachings. I've been more of a fan of his like structure, like his form, like the way that he runs a business. And then obviously there are many personal reasons for why I do not contribute.
We can share what we like about something while also acknowledging how deeply problematic it is.
Totally. But yes. Thank you for that permission. But my question is, he is like this forefront, like, this is how you do it.
Yes.
And he's like such a masculine presence. And it's something I'm always asking myself of like, it's not that I'm trying to be the female Tony Robbins, but what does the feminine version look like on that level? And that I don't have an answer, but
yeah, I mean, and this is something I've also have had thoughts around. Could the feminine ever be at that level?
I'm clapping, and
because, well, I'm just thinking there's so many ways we could approach this. One of the thoughts I've had is, would the feminine even want to be at that level? It's just the masculine is all about spreading the seed, right? Kind of metaphorically, right? It's all about tradition. I mean, we're getting a little black and white here, but if the masculine is all about like spreading the seed and like impacting the masses, then the feminine, I would imagine, is about going deep, going into the depth, right? Not about quality, but the quantity. And is the world ready for that message? One. Two, like, how could you make that type of impact if the feminine is so about that deep nourishment? I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a real question. That I really do think about that all the time, Thais. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing of like, would the feminine want that?
Yeah.
And if we do take the metaphor of like spreading the seed, I feel like the feminine, I know that's hilarious. I feel like the feminine is then there to cultivate and like
Yeah.
nurture the seed. And so then I'm curious, what does that look like even in a business sense? Because I think at the end of the day, Taste, like I am still a businesswoman. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Yes.
So it's like I have to
And we have to be good business people.
Exactly.
Because this is our livelihood.
Yeah.
And it does not do any good for us to be barely making ends meet, not knowing if we're going to have food tomorrow.
Exactly. And I think that's where this dance is coming in, is with like, this is my business and this is my livelihood. I've been a full-time business owner for 4 years. Like, this is all I do, you know what I mean? Not all I do, but this is how I make a living in this world.
Mm-hmm.
So like that is important. And the integrity piece is also important.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel integrity is one of my values. It's something I go back to again and again and again. And I find that every time I go back to the value of integrity, my life gets richer.
It's so real. And can we agree that like, I feel like integrity should be one of the values of this industry?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's
especially particularly while there is no regulation. Like,
Yeah.
even when there is maybe possibly in the future regulation, integrity should still be there, but especially while. And I think another value that I would vote in, if I can, is radical accountability.
Ooh, tell us more.
Tell us
more.
I just feel like, it is these conversations, like some people would perceive this conversation as being, negative, and we're hating on the industry, et cetera, et cetera. But actually what we're doing is we're holding our industry radically accountable to doing better. And we cannot hold each other. Like, that is radical love to me. That is love. Is holding each other accountable. Is saying, I witness you. I see you when you're out of integrity, and I'm willing to call it out to help you get back in integrity. Right. And so we need to be having these conversations, and people need to be listening, and we need to be exploring this and holding each other accountable to doing better for ourselves and for our clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's why I'm so glad that you brought this conversation up, because this is something I've been thinking about. And this is something that Lindsay and I have been thinking about, and we talk about on Reclaim constantly. It's like, how can we do better in an industry that is meant to be a service to the world, that is meant to change the world, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being open to having this conversation, because I was just talking to one of my clients about how, like, I constantly, one of the questions that's like always in my journaling is like, can you be a leader of the personal development industry and be completely in integrity and be of service? Like, can those two things, being a leader and being in integrity, can they exist together? And like, intellectually, if the answer feels like, well, duh, they better freaking exist together. But I think what we're noticing in the industry is that that's not really the case. And that's a lot of the leaders are not necessarily in integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think right now we're getting a huge reckoning in a way in the coaching industry, particularly in the conversations of racism, but also sexism, and also all the other isms, but particularly racism. And we're seeing how a lot of the belief systems that kind of uphold some of this more, spiritual coaching community is actually really based out of a very harmful it's coming from a lot of harm and a lot of privilege, right? Which then kind
Yes.
of perpetuates each other. And so we are being called right now to do better.
We really are. I love that you bring that up because it's like, I feel like racism has been the catalyst for us to have the discussion of privilege, period. You know what I mean? Like, I'm Dominican. I'm not white. I don't have white privilege, but I do have education privilege because I like grew up in I come from a really educated family. I have culture privilege because I grew up like in a well-to-do neighborhood. And it's like all of us, if we are not conscious of it, we like all have privileges that our beliefs come from, which then we're putting to in this industry.
Yeah. 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 And, I would love to hear your thoughts then on like, okay, so I'm maybe a new coach, or I'm in the coaching industry for a little while, and I'm seeing all of this go down, and I don't know if I'm in integrity. Like, I don't know if what I'm doing is actually making an impact, or if it's coming from a place of harm. Because, sometimes when we're in that space, it's very hard to be self-aware and to know. And I would love to hear like, what would you recommend, or like what is something that you've been thinking about, or how have you known that you're out of integrity?
That's such a good question. I feel like if I were a new coach coming into the online industry right now, I would feel so anxious. I would feel so anxious at like all the talk of make this amount of money and this amount of time, and this is how you get clients, and this is how you do this. I personally, I think how that would manifest in my physical body is as anxiety. And I do think that like when my anxiety flares up, because anxiety is something I struggle with, it's always a sign like something's off. Like something, this is how my body is responding to something that's not aligned.
Yeah.
So I feel like for a new coach coming in, I would tell them to do the work, do the real work. Coaching is such a powerful healing modality. Do the work. Do the good work. And second, to remember why you became a coach. For me, when I felt the most out of integrity in this industry, I had realized that it was like maybe 2 years ago, and I was just starting to charge like 5 figures, right? Like good charge, 5 figures. And I had, I do have like a personal thing where like if something doesn't feel right, I can't take action on it. So that's always been a good sign for me.
That's a great protective mechanism.
Yeah, it's like an inner integrity. Like I actually can't take action on things that don't feel right to me.
I feel like so often, I don't know if you've felt this way and seen this in your clients, I feel like so often procrastination is an invitation that you're actually out of alignment.
So I think it can be an invitation. Yeah, I think it's an invitation always to look deeper.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do think it can be resistance.
Absolutely.
But a lot of the time I do think it can be like, oh, you don't want to do this because you don't want to do this. Like
mind-blowing concept.
Right? But when like the first time that I really, really, really felt that I was out of integrity, I just had realized that I became money hungry. And it became all about like having to prove myself, like to my parents because I don't have a traditional job, or like to my sisters, or I became money hungry in an effort to prove myself to other people. And whatever was happening in my life, I don't know what was the catalyst that tuned me into that, but I do remember being like, I forgot why I started coaching.
Yeah.
It was never about money.
Yeah.
I had graduated grad school and I was an education major, and I knew I wanted to help people, but I knew I didn't want to be in a classroom. But literally me coming to coaching was because I wanted to help people. And for me, and I think for a lot of new coaches, like hang on to that.
Yes.
Like, that's why we're really doing this. That is why we spend the hours to get trained, and why we spend the hours doing your practicums and doing all your coaching, like credits, because we care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the people that really, really care about helping I feel like we almost have to be even more in integrity to make up for the others, if that makes sense.
I agree. I completely agree. And I would say, if you're new coming into this and you don't have any type of certification, you don't have any type of education in how to be a coach, get that. More than hiring a business coach, because, in many ways, women hide behind education. We like keep taking on more and more courses until we feel like we're quote unquote ready, and we're never ready. I'm not speaking about that. I'm speaking about you suddenly decide that you want to be a coach, and you're like, oh, I could do this. I could be a coach. And then because our field has no regulation, you feel like, oh, then I'll just take on some clients and then I'll see where it goes, right? And I want us all to take a step back and to have accreditations, because that, again, is how we become in integrity. When we're taught what our line is and what our line is not.
Absolutely. Well, one of the best books I ever read in coaching school was called Evidence-Based Coaching. And it talks about probably 10 different fields that contributed to what coaching actually is and what coaching actually is not. And I feel like that book is phenomenal. I feel like Coactive Coaching, which is the book from that school, it's like a bio. That's like my coaching Bible. I recommend it to any of my clients who are coaches. But like, that's what I mean by do the work. Like, take the training. And I just love that you said that, Thais. Like, women, we do tend to hide behind education. This isn't about hiding. It is just about doing your due diligence. Like,
because if you love it, if you love it, then wouldn't you want to be educated in it? Wouldn't you want to become a master at it? And I'm not saying you have to get educated to be a master at something, but we need that foundation. I would never go into, I think I love neurosurgery. I think that sounds like a great thing to do. Oh my God, I love the idea of surgery. Like,
I'm just going to get a client. I'm just going to get a patient and try it out.
And see what happens. Right? Like, obviously there's much more on the line for neurosurgery than for coaching, but still, it's like, if you're thinking about going into a new field and starting a business and making money, that means you have now a responsibility. Money is that exchange of energy. That means that you also are giving, and part of that giving is your education, is your due diligence. I love that you said that, due diligence. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah. Do your due diligence and then jump in. Like, yes, by all means, get clients and do the work before. Like, that's all.
That's integrity.
It's meant to be a stepping stone, right? Like, the education is a stepping stone, not an obstacle. And I do think our industry has done a great job of telling new coaches that you don't need training to join my $2,000 online program.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get the scripts and you're going to get the templates that right? But that's like what it is.
It's so painful to hear. I know. Yeah. I feel like as an industry, we are doing harm. And that's heartbreaking. We got to do better, because I see so much potential in what we can do and the magic we create with our clients. Yeah. Well, I want to completely change the subject. Do you know where we're headed?
I think I know where we're headed.
Can you tell by my face?
Yeah.
Well, you just dropped 2 big bombs on me of exciting things to unpack before we hit the record button. And okay, so we talked about integrity in the coaching, but there's some things that you're exploring in your personal life, and I feel like it's such a juicy topic. So tell the world, please.
I will come out to the world again. So so I came out of the closet as a lesbian when I was 18 years old. Like I was still in high school when I started to come out. And I'm 29 now, and I've been dating women since I was 18. And I just ended a long-term relationship with a woman. And I took some months off to like heal from that. And then I decided to start dating again. And all of a sudden, all of a sudden, Thais, I'm telling you, all of a sudden, I wanted to date men. And it was like, it's not surprising to me because I feel like I've always believed like women's sexuality is fluid.
Absolutely.
So it's not even like I have shame around it, and I wasn't necessarily surprised by it, but it's like there is a difference between dating men and women, and it's just been like this really interesting.
I want to hear the differences.
Oh man, it's I'm giggling.
I'm giggling and blushing over there.
I'm totally blushing. It's different because women have this ability to communicate what's on their mind and to communicate. I think it is because we are in touch with our feelings in just like a different way, that we're able to just say like, this is what I need from you, or this is what I want from you, or this is what I don't want from you, or this is where I see this going, or da-da-da. Whereas like men, I'm like, because I know when I think listens to this, but I feel like, no, they should freaking listen to it actually. I feel like men, to me, feel like another species right now. But also it's sometimes like pulling teeth to get them to just communicate their honest feelings. And that's not for every man. Like I've dated guys who are like super open and forthcoming with their feelings, usually water signs. But for the rest of the guys, it's just like, wait, like, but do you even like me? Because you've never told me that you like me.
Isn't it mind-blowing? No, it's mind-blowing.
But then you bring it up to them and they're like, yeah, of course I like you. We've been going out for this long. And I'm like, you haven't said anything.
They use that language, right? Where you're like, are you enjoying this, or are you like anything? And they're like, yeah, of course. That's why we're doing it. And I'm like, there is no of course. Let's not use the word of course here.
No assumptions.
I didn't of course this. That is why I'm asking. If I am asking, it's because I don't know. Yeah,
exactly. And it's fun. I love that we're talking about this, because it is really funny to me that I feel like there are these stereotypes of guys that we have, and I constantly have to be asking myself, like, am I just like projecting the stereotype onto this person, or am I actually like experiencing this from them? And that's been a really interesting question to answer in the process of like just starting to date men at the age of 29.
I feel like that is such a great question that we can be asking ourselves in a slew of different kind of identities or visible identities, right? Like, do I like this person because I genuinely like them? Or do I like them because they're a person of color and I want to seem like the good white person, and I want, like challenging questions to ask ourselves, like, am I being nice to this person because, of our shared humanity? Or am I being nice to this person because I think that I'm going to get something in this relationship?
That's so real.
I feel like we can ask this question with like people that are higher up, quote unquote, in the industry, right? Who are more well known in the industry. Like, am I being nice to this person because I genuinely like them, or because I want to impress them, because I want them to think of me in a certain way? Like, what is that? I feel like this question that you're asking yourself is so cool, because we should be kind of asking ourselves this question on so many different areas.
On so many, well, and that's like, I feel like it's asking ourselves to find the truth in every situation. And I feel like truth and integrity go hand in hand. And I just feel, right, like to round back even to the beginning of this conversation, it's like, it takes a second. Like you can't be on auto if you are living your life in integrity and if you are living your life in truth. You can't be on autopilot.
Yes.
And you can't be like taking commands from someone else.
Yeah.
Whether it be like a coach or society or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But it's like, it takes time to form these thoughts for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And so what are you finding as you're dating men? Are you noticing that a lot of times you are more projecting and like you have to then unpack that projection? Or
yes.
Yeah.
That would be a resounding. What was my other option?
I don't know.
That would be a resounding yes. And it's funny because I have a few male friends who, obviously I have a lot of gay male friends. I come from the theater world and I'm queer. I feel like I can't even use the word lesbian anymore because I'm not only dating women. But I also have some straight male friends, and I like text them and I'm like, am I overreacting? Like, is this weird? Like, can you give me some insight from the perspective of a male? And then usually, Thais, as soon as I send it, I'm like, why don't I just ask him?
Yeah.
Like, why am I like, so that's kind of what I'm finding. Like, that's where my edge is right now, is like, why does it feel safer to take insights from outside parties rather than to deal with the actual person at hand?
Yeah. Yeah, I really hear that. And I feel like that's exactly what new coaches do when they're entering the coaching world.
Yeah.
Like, why is it that it's so much easier to, get insight from everybody else than to trust our own shit?
Absolutely. Well, this is right. I feel like this is part of being human, and it's part of like the process of becoming. And we kind of have to like unbecome to become. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels more like, rather than putting on like this coat of courage, I feel like it's like just taking off the veil of I don't even know what.
False masks.
Yeah, taking off more than it is putting on.
Yeah, I call that unlearning, right? Like, I feel like we've been taught to be a certain way. We've developed coping mechanisms. We've learned all this shit. And I feel like our entire adulthood is a service to the unlearning. And that's how we become our true selves. And I feel like this is so cool that you're exploring your sexuality and finding like, I think what's so cool about how you're exploring your sexuality is that you're doing it from a really open space versus like needing to land on, well, then what does that mean about who I am? And what does that mean about, who I am in the world? I think that's really cool.
Oh, thank you, Thais. I feel like one day I will write a book about this. And if there's anything that I have learned, it's that there's no destination.
What?
There's no destination.
You're breaking my heart here. I want to get there, though. I want to get there.
You know what I would say is like there are many destinations, but there's no big place that you land and then you're done until you pass.
Yeah.
Until you pass. And so I just feel like it's all a journey, and it's all a learning journey.
I love it. Thank you. This has been such a rich conversation. I really appreciate your insights and your thoughts on these topics. It's so complicated. I mean, both of these things are so complicated. Integrity is so different for each of us, and like our sexuality and our pleasure and our businesses, it's all so different. And the fact that you showed up so powerfully and so vulnerably, I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Thais. I appreciate you too.
Love fest.